All right, listeners. So today we're going to take a deep dive into a career that seems like it's really blowing up right now, flight
Oh, yeah,
operations.
for sure.
You've told us you're interested in maybe becoming a flight operations officer someday. So
Yeah.
we're really excited to dig into this RoleCatcher research and see what kind of things we can learn.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there.
So let's talk about what this job actually is, what we found surprising about it, and what it really takes to, I don't know, like survive and thrive in this kind of high pressure world.
Definitely high pressure, yeah. But it is a really critical role in the world of aviation. I mean, we all kind of take for granted, right, that planes just take off and land on time.
Right.
But behind the scenes, there's this whole intricate operation going on to make sure that happens, smoothly and safely.
Yeah.
And that's where flight operations officers, that's where they come in.
And speaking of like smooth and safe, one thing that really jumped out at me when we were looking at this RoleCatcher research was this whole emphasis on something they call expediting the movement of aircraft,
Oh, interesting.
which is a mouthful, but I guess it makes sense, right? We all know safety is like job number one,
Yeah.
but it's interesting how much they emphasize efficiency too.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating balance because, I mean, think about it. Every minute a plane is delayed, it's like this domino effect.
Right, for sure.
It impacts connecting flights, it impacts gate availability, it can even mess with baggage handling crews.
Wow.
So a flight operations officer who can keep those planes on schedule, it's not just about saving time. I mean, they're really optimizing like the whole system.
It's like
Yeah.
it's like they're playing high stakes Tetris, but with, tons of metal hurtling through the air.
That's a great way to put it.
No pressure, though. So the research also digs into the nitty-gritty of the job. What does a flight operations officer actually do all day? And it's a pretty diverse list.
Yeah.
They're compiling data, calculating fuel needs, figuring out weight and balance, taking weather conditions into account, coordinating with air traffic control.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. It seems like you need a pretty serious, like, versatile skill set for this.
Totally. And it's not just about crunching numbers either, which I mean is definitely a big part of it.
Yeah.
But like take fuel calculations, for example. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't just plug in the distance and call it a day.
Right. There's got to be more to it.
Exactly. There's wind speed, altitude, even how old the aircraft is. All of that factors into how much fuel you need.
Huh.
And a miscalculation. We're not just talking about a delay. It could mean a diverted flight, an emergency landing.
Mhm.
You don't even want to go there.
Okay, yeah, that's where the weight of this job really kind of sinks in. You're not dealing with logistics and numbers, you're dealing with people's lives.
Exactly.
And speaking of pressure, the role catcher people didn't shy away from some of the more, I guess, demanding aspects of the job either, right? They talk about irregular hours, high stress levels, you're constantly in a fast-paced environment.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting is that that's actually what draws a lot of people to this field. Yeah. Those challenges, they're definitely real, but it also means you're constantly engaged. You're using your brain, solving complex problems like in real time. You're not stuck at a desk all day. You're in the thick of it, making decisions that actually have an impact on keeping people safe, on keeping things moving.
So for someone who like thrives on adrenaline, who's a real problem solver, this is actually right up their alley.
Totally.
Now, let's talk a little bit about how technology is changing the game. Because one thing that RoleCatcher mentioned was this increasing use of AI and automation, especially when it comes to getting hired in the first place.
Oh, yeah.
It's not even enough to just be good at the job anymore. You've got to be good at getting your resume past those AI gatekeepers.
That is the truth. That's the reality of the job market today. These applicant tracking systems, or ATS as they call them, they're designed to sift through tons and tons of applications.
Oh, I hate those things.
Right. And they can be really, really specific. So it's not just about listing your skills. You have to basically tailor your resume to match the exact words and phrases they're looking for.
It's like you need to be a programmer just to apply for a job these days.
Pretty much, right?
So for someone who's listening and, they see all these automation systems and they get overwhelmed, what advice would you give them? It really is kind of like you're reverse engineering your resume for the robots.
Yeah, it's a little crazy.
Makes you appreciate like the human touch a bit more.
For sure.
But okay, so you've conquered the ATS, you've gotten past all that, and now you've landed an interview. Right. So RoleCatcher's research, they also break down what a typical career path actually looks like for a flight operations officer.
Yeah, it usually starts with a position like flight operations assistant.
Okay.
That's where you're really going to be in the weeds, doing all the day-to-day stuff, compiling data, flight schedules, weather reports, aircraft maintenance logs. You basically become this walking encyclopedia of information.
So it's all about like building up that foundation of knowledge before you can like really move up.
Exactly. You got to learn the ropes.
Yeah.
And then comes the flight operations coordinator role.
Okay.
And this is where you get to start actually using all that knowledge
Yeah.
in a more, fast-paced way.
Right.
You're coordinating with pilots, air traffic control, ground crews, making sure everybody's on the same page and things are running smoothly.
So you've gone from like data cruncher to air traffic. Well, you're not air traffic control.
Right, right. But you're getting there.
But you're definitely more in the action. It seems like this career path really keeps you on your toes.
Oh, absolutely. You're constantly learning, growing. And then you reach the top, flight operations officer.
The big leagues.
Exactly. And at this level, you're not just reacting to situations, you're anticipating them, right? You're making decisions about flight routes, thinking about the weather, fuel efficiency, even like potential airspace congestion.
Yeah.
And you're doing this hours in advance.
Wow. So you're basically like playing 4D chess, but with airplanes.
That's a good way to put it, yeah.
Which sounds incredibly demanding, but also kind of incredibly rewarding at the same time.
Oh, for sure. You're responsible for making sure that, hundreds, maybe even thousands of passengers get where they need to go safely and on time.
And the buck stops with you.
Exactly.
High stakes. RoleCatcher also mentioned that the training for this, for flight operations officers, it can be pretty intense. What can someone expect in those first couple of years on the job?
Think of it kind of like an apprenticeship.
Okay.
You're going to be paired up with some really experienced officers. You'll shadow them, learn the ropes, absorb all that knowledge they've built up over the years. And you're not just learning, like, procedures from a book.
Right.
They're teaching you how to think like a flight operations officer, how to spot problems before they even happen, how to make those split-second decisions when, every second counts.
So it's not just about what you know, it's about how you think, how you apply it, especially under pressure.
Absolutely. And that's where what they call those soft skills come in. Being a good communicator, knowing how to work as part of a team, being a leader, knowing how to adapt.
Which honestly, that's a lot.
It is. It is.
Yeah. That's a lot for one person.
But that's the thing. You're dealing with so many different people, often in really stressful situations. So being able to talk to people, build relationships, and, stay calm when things get crazy.
Yeah.
That's just as important as all the technical stuff.
So you got to be like a master of both the technical and the people skills, which is
a tall order.
It's a lot.
It is. It is.
Now, speaking of skills, RoleCatcher also gets into the educational side of things. What kind of degrees and certifications can give you an edge if you're trying to break into this field?
Yeah, so a bachelor's degree in something related, like aviation management or aeronautical science, that's becoming pretty standard these days. And it's not just about checking a box.
Right.
Those courses, they teach you about meteorology, about how airspace is managed, all about the different aircraft systems.
Mm-hmm.
It all comes together to give you this really solid understanding of how everything works.
So all those late-night cram sessions for physics exams, they might have actually been worth it.
They're paying off.
Yeah.
And then you've got the certifications.
Yeah.
The big one is the FAA aircraft dispatcher license. And if you want to work as an aircraft dispatcher in the U.S., you have to have this one. And it's no walk in the park either.
What does it involve for those of us who aren't, aviation experts?
Well, you really got to dive deep into everything. Meteorology, navigation, flight planning, aircraft systems. I mean, everything. It's like, if you get this license, you've earned your black belt in flight operations, basically.
Yeah, it's like the ultimate stamp of approval.
Exactly.
For those who want to be, in the control tower, so to speak.
Right, right.
But even with all the right degrees and certifications, RoleCatcher made it clear that this is a really competitive field. What advice would you give to someone who's just starting out who really wants to stand out?
Networking. I mean, it's huge in any field, but in aviation, it's everything. Yep. It's not just about who you know.
Yeah.
But it definitely helps to build those relationships,
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to reach out to people. Learn from them. Find yourself a mentor, someone who's already doing what you want to do.
Like having a personal Sherpa to guide you.
Exactly.
So we've talked about what the job is, the challenges, the career path, the skills you need. But for the listener out there, the one who's truly passionate about aviation, who really thinks this might be their thing, what's the one key takeaway you want them to walk away with from this deep dive? It sounds like a career where you really can never stop learning.
It really is. That's what makes it so cool, honestly. Aviation is constantly changing.
Yeah.
So you always got to be Learning new stuff, staying ahead of the curve, new tech, new rules, new challenges popping up all the time.
Right.
A flight operations officer's work is never really done.
And speaking of never being done, I was going to say, RoleCatcher's research, they don't just stop at flight operations officer, right?
Oh, no, no.
Their website's got like a treasure trove of information on all kinds of aviation careers.
Absolutely,
Like
yeah.
a whole treasure trove.
They've got guides on becoming a pilot if you want to go the air traffic controller route, if you want to be the one fixing the planes.
Oh, wow.
Everything.
It's like a one-stop shop for like any aviation dream you might have.
Exactly, yeah. If you want to work in aviation, they've got something for you.
So even if, like, after this deep dive, you're thinking, okay, maybe flight operations officer isn't really my thing, don't worry, it doesn't mean aviation's not for you.
Not at all.
Yeah.
This is just one piece of a much bigger world, honestly.
Exactly. And, you know, the skills we've been talking about, problem solving, thinking critically, attention to detail,
So important.
those are useful for basically any job in aviation, really.
Oh, absolutely. Those are transferable skills. You can take those anywhere.
Which I think is such an important thing to remember. You know, what you're learning now, even if you change your mind later on, it's never wasted.
Exactly. Never always.
Well, on that note, I think it might be time for us to land this deep dive.
I like it.
Hopefully you, our listener, are feeling a little more informed, maybe even inspired,
Yeah, get out there.
and a little bit more ready to, you know, take on the world of aviation, however you want to do it.
It's a great world to be a part of, that's for sure.
So for everyone listening, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time.
Happy flying.
Happy flying!